So, continuing our review of the units in Civilization 5. You have siege towers, may only be built by the Assyrians. Swordsmen, distinct from the legion. So if you're not the Romans, you need a sword, I suppose. Then the medieval era, you actually have berserkers, unique to the Danes. I suppose maybe they don't have the Norwegians in this? Let's find that out instead of guessing. Civilizations and leaders, so Norway. No. We only have Denmark. Okay. That gives us our answer. That's why the Danes build the berserkers and not the Norwegians. Alright, somehow they've jumped ahead to a tank of some kind. Let's go through the medieval units again. So camel archers for the Arabs, same as in Civilization 4. Crossbowmen, they give you them in the medieval era. It's true that some armies had them. They're more associated with the Renaissance, but they are an older type of unit, that's true. They were actually banned by the Pope from engaging in combat within Europe. Doesn't mean they followed the international law of the time any more than a lot of modern armies follow international law, but they were actually banned from use within Europe, or within the Christian world. Then you have longbowmen. It's a more obvious medieval unit. Pikemen, more or less medieval. They became more important in the Renaissance as gunpowder came in because you used them to hold back the enemy as you tried to reload and so on. Because early muskets were very hard to handle. This is one thing that all the Civilization games get wrong, is that you're not allowed to keep your pikemen into the gunpowder era. Then we have the Renaissance with the cannon, of course, caravels, frigates, which are more actually associated with the era of the Enlightenment, but notice the Enlightenment isn't here, so that's clearly their reason for putting it with the Renaissance. Then you have musketeers, only for the French, as in past versions going back to 4, I believe, of Civilization. And then you have the musketman, just the standard one. Looks like he's from the 17th century instead of the 18th century. The Now. The Now is a naval unit which excels at sea exploration. It has more movement than the caravel, which it replaces. May only be built by the Portuguese. Then you have privateers for doing sneak attacks on your enemies. Naval unit that attacks as a melee unit starts with the first coastal raider promotion, allowing it to earn gold from attacking coastal cities. They capture any naval units that they defeat as prize ships for your navy. It doesn't say that you can use these without being identified, as in Civilization 4. I believe it's Civilization 4 when you can first build these. They're kind of an oddball in the Civilization universe because you can use them basically for 18th century Black Ops, essentially. In real life, it was pretty well known which privateers worked for whom, but it can get very complicated very fast. The Sea Beggar, only the Dutch can build it. So then the Ship of the Line, only the English may build it. They were basically the heaviest warships in the Royal Navy in the 18th century. The Turtle Ship, this is one that I didn't know about, at least before I was playing the Civilization series. You can only build it if you're the Koreans. So it looks a lot like a Viking longboat, although there are clearly key differences in the design, especially in the hull design. You can get winged hussars, although only the Polish may build them. If you zoom down to the industrial era, Austrians are the only civilization that can build hussars. You also have archaeologists, special subtype of worker that are used to excavate antiquity sites to either create landmark improvements or to extract artifacts, to fill in great work of art slots in museums, and so on. So they're a rather new idea. You have Cossacks, same as in Civilization 4. Only the Russians may build it. One change is that the unit has a combat bonus when fighting enemies that have already taken damage. And you have the Ironclad. This is a pretty realistic representation of it in game, with that what looks like a ram built into the bow. I actually like this one. I think I like almost all the Ironclads in Civilization other than the one in Civilization 2, which just looks too, I don't know, too much like a literal vessel to me. Because it's obviously based on the ironclads used on the Mississippi. Then you have more modern ships, like the battleship, of course, carriers, destroyers. You don't have the industrial era cruiser in Civilization 5, although you do have missile cruisers. If you go down to the information era, you can build missile cruisers if you want, but not until the information era. Land ship is not a ship. This was an older term for a tank. So they have a British Army tank from World War I here, or an interpretation of it. Most of them didn't have this gun here. They had the guns in the sides, though. Strangely enough, it's not an English-only unit. This is universal. If you have oil and combustion and have not already developed combined arms, you can build this. And then later, you can build tanks to replace these. Again, you need oil to build it. And then replacing that, you have modern armor. The paratrooper's back. That's good news. You don't need an add-on for it, at least in this version of Civilization 5 that I have with the add-ons already built into it. You have infantry and so-called Great War infantry, so a slightly cruder version of these. You still have the machine gun unit. Actually, if we look carefully, it becomes obsolete with nuclear fission and the bazooka. Bazooka can actually take out a tank, whereas machine guns historically were the primary targets of tanks, in World War I anyway. But another thing that you have, jumping back, is you have Gatling guns too. So in the industrial era, you can build Gatling guns with the development of industrialization. Becomes obsolete with ballistics, and you can upgrade to a machine gun. That's with a Japanese-specific Zero unit in terms of aircraft. Another change is that when you get into the information era, you can build sci-fi themed units. So, a giant death robot, as they put it, which in gamers' terms, I guess, would be a mech. Maybe they didn't want to call it a mech for copyright reasons. So if you have nuclear fusion and uranium, you can build the giant death robot or mech. Also, this is another fictional unit from one of Firaxis's other games. Quote, futuristic infantry units, skilled at dropping into danger from far across the world. Squad can move and pillage after landing, but cannot enter combat until the following turn. So they're a little bit like many proposed units in the world's militaries that paradrop from space. Nobody's admitting to having them yet. You need nanotechnology for this in the technology tree. In reality, robotics in real life are more important, since you need to have these suits, and the suits, at least as conceived that I've seen on the internet, are supposed to increase the strength of the soldier. So they're not simply body armor. And of course, if you're dropping the soldiers from space, they need to also be spacesuits. But so these are your final infantry units for Civilization 5.
We'll look at some of the mobile units next.